This video is brought to you by Skillshare. More on them later in the video. In 2016, I wrote, illustrated, and self-published a book series called Multiverse Tales. And now, in 2019, I'm curious to see how much better I could illustrate these things today. Let's find out. The Multiverse Tales was all about monsters versus superheroes, which probably doesn't surprise you if you watch this channel a lot. Those are my favorite kinds of things to draw. And I've mentioned before on this channel that for this book series, because I knew I wasn't a good enough artist at the time to do a comic booky style for the entire thing, I decided to do a stripped back, very cartoony art style that still looks kind of good today because I stuck with what I could do at the time. But of course, today, I am a much better artist than I was when I was making these. So what I'm gonna do is take some of my favorite shots, images, and panels from these books and draw them in my modern art style. Now, I think we should start with the first book in the series, Multiverse Tales, The Agency of Supernatural Protection. And I know exactly what image I want to redraw first. It was one of my favorites at the time, and it was one of the first times I ever really used glowy bits in my images, which is the thing I love doing now. And that's this drawing right here. Nothing particularly special, but I really did love it at the time. Let's see what I can do nowadays. Alexis Jones. She was not the main character of the Agency of Supernatural Protection, but she was a really awesome character, and she and Sterling and Jill, the actual main character of the book, were partners that had superpowers and worked for this agency that protected people from supernatural creatures. You know, pretty much like the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense from Hellboy. Same kind of idea. There's a lot of derivative ideas in these books. But what I really liked about this image back in the day was it was the first time I was kind of trying to play with lighting, and you can't even really necessarily tell that from looking at the image if you're not reading the story at the same time and know what's happening. But basically, she and her partner were in a cave system, and everything was being lit by these little glow sticks. You can see it's on her thigh. I've actually decided for my redraw, I'm trying to do pretty much the same pose, but I'm gonna move that glow stick over to her other leg so that it's right under her face and her arms so that it's kind of lighting up the main area of her body a bit more, and we'll have some really cool lighting underneath her face that I was kind of trying to do in that old one, but I think it's going to work a lot better if the light source is on her other side closer to her front. Another thing that I'm fixing up in this new one is I'm making her hair a little bit more textured and bumpy. She's supposed to have pretty curly hair, that sort of small curl kind of hair, and her hair is supposed to be in a bit of a curly bun, and I just want to fix that up, make it look a little bit more realistic. Not actually realistic, just more realistic. And also her hair swoops don't look quite curly enough, and they're a little bit longer than I want, so I'm going to shorten those up a bit. And then I'm just going to add some extra details in different places, like I'm going to add a belt, and I'm going to add a bit of texture to part of the pants, and I'm going to put more wrinkles in the pants. But overall, I'm just going to do a better job with the shading and lighting, and I'm going to color it because all my work looks better when I'm coloring it. I considered switching up what color that flare on her leg would be, whether I should make it blue or something else, because her costume is largely red, so I wasn't sure if I should double down on that and have a red flare, but I was like, yeah, you know what, let's lean right into it. The only thing that I add that's another color after this is I add a bit of blue rim lighting behind her, just as if there's a little bit of bluish light maybe coming from the entrance of the cave or from Sterling, her partner, whose outfit is all blue. Maybe his flare is blue, just keeping his flare the same color of his outfit. I don't know, that's kind of silly. I just wanted a little bit of extra rim lighting around her back, and I think it ends up looking pretty nice. Another thing that I do in this image that I didn't do back then is I use more black. I'm just better at using inks, which, especially right now, I'm in that mindset because I did that episode last week where I tried to do Inktober in one day, so I'm currently feeling a lot more confident with my inking. But yeah, overall, I love how this one turned out. I love that one source of lighting pretty much the whole image, and I think it's way better with what I can do nowadays. So let's take a look at the final result. I really like that. The lighting works a lot better. Now, let's jump on to the second book, which is called Kali the Energy Forger. And I remember in this book series, one of my favorite things about it was this creature that I created called the Jian of Dar. And we're gonna redraw that next. Alright, so the Jian of Dar, and this scene in the book is another scene that's taking place in a series of caves. I was very not confident with drawing backgrounds back then, so a lot of these stories just end up in caves or a forest. Actually, even forests can be kind of hard to draw, but the third book, there's a bunch of stuff taking place in a forest. Either way, I was avoiding buildings for a lot of these books. But anyway, for this creature, it was supposed to be a sort of gorilla scorpion kind of thing, and I really like this pose looking back on that book, and I want to make it even more movement filled. I want to add some movement streaks, and I want a more dramatic expression on the creature's face as it's charging into battle. It's not just snarling, it's letting out a big roar. And I also want to add some detail to the tail, add a bit more contrast, add more blacks into the image, and I changed up how it's a creature that's, I don't remember exactly what happened in this story, but this creature is sort of mutated by this evil queen in the book or something. I can't believe I don't remember this, but I don't really remember what it is. But either way, the gorilla was given some kind of crazy lightning powers, and it was shooting lightning out of its tail. For this, instead of having it be like a little weird water gun, I decided to have it so that there's these little spikes at the end of the tail that make a ball of lightning that it can then hurl. And I think in this redraw, the thing that I do that is the least interesting is the lightning streak things along its back. It's supposed to have kind of glowy bits along its back that imply that the lightning goes down its weird scorpion tail. And I don't really do anything that interesting in this redraw, but besides that, I really like how this creature turns out. I add more dark areas to it. Again, I do a better job with the shading and lighting. I use a textured brush for the fur and the tail and pretty much the whole thing, so that it's still got that cel-shaded-ish look, but it's kind of a more textured cel shading. And in this old one, I don't really know where I was thinking the main lighting source was coming from. Obviously, there's a little bit coming from these energy blasts that are going past him. So in this new version, there's that, and then there's the light in his tail. But in this one, I'm also thinking the lighting's coming from in front of him and a bit above him. I don't know exactly what the lighting source is. I'm pretty sure in the scene there was some kind of big glowing rock thing in the middle of the room that they were all going after. But either way, I made that lighting source mostly in the front and then use a bit of the stuff flying around him to give a bit of extra rim lighting. And I put one of the blasts going in behind him so that there's one in front, one in behind. Just adds a little bit more depth to the scene, but it is still a pretty flat image because I did a lot of stuff where characters were just running sideways back then as opposed to coming towards us or going away from us, because that's harder to draw. But yeah, had a lot of fun redrawing this, so hope you like the new version, and here it is. Alright, these are going really well. This is a lot of fun. Now, I've mentioned on this channel before that I'm a huge advocate for taking online art courses. And back when I was trying to get good enough to make Multiverse Tales, I was taking a bunch of courses on Skillshare, which is why I'm super glad that they're the sponsor for today's video. For anyone that doesn't know, Skillshare is an awesome online community with thousands of courses covering dozens of creative and entrepreneurial skills, including tons of really great illustration courses. Premium membership gives you unlimited access, so you can join the classes and communities that are just right for you. Whether you want to fuel your creativity or curiosity or learn new skills that can help you with your career, Skillshare is the perfect place to keep you learning and thriving. Lately, I've been wanting to learn how to use Procreate because I want another app that I can try messing around with and use when I'm drawing on my tablet on the go. And luckily, Skillshare's got an awesome course by Jerem Vogel called Digital Illustration: Learn to Use Procreate. And Jerome Vogel's art looks really awesome, so I'm super excited to try learning Procreate from him. And as I said, when I was working on Multiverse Tales, I needed to learn how to draw creatures better. So I took Jeffrey Jacobs' course on drawing animals, from anatomy to rendering, and it really helped me out, and I got way better at drawing creatures in a really short amount of time. And of course, one of the great things about Skillshare is it is super affordable, especially when you compare it to expensive in-person classes and workshops and all that for less than $10 a month on an annual membership. And because Skillshare is sponsoring this video, you can click the link that I'm putting up on screen and in the description to get a 2-month free trial. And I seriously highly recommend it. There's so much good stuff you can learn online. Just flick through some of their courses. There's so much great stuff. Okay, but now let's get back to redrawing some Multiverse Tales stuff and go on to Book 3, Monster Continent. It had the most monsters in it, as you can assume from the name, and I am going to redraw. One sec, I've got it right in my head. I know exactly what shot it is. It's a dude punching out a big old shark monster. Let's get back to drawing. Alright, now for this drawing, I really wanted to push things because I remember when I first did this drawing back in the day, I loved it. It was probably my favorite drawing I'd done in the whole Multiverse Tales series, and I still like it looking at it now, but I remember thinking it had a good sense of movement and all the poses were good, and I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the poses, which you can see I'm kind of doing here. It was kind of hard figuring out how exactly I wanted the shark flying back. But anyway, I wanted the sense of movement to feel way bigger in this one, and I wanted the impact to feel more impactful, so I did a bunch of things that I didn't know how to do back then. For one thing, I was thinking about Heath's action, his punch, and Heath is our superhero type character here. He's not really a superhero, but he has superpowers. But anyway, I was thinking about his movement in terms of the line of action, which isn't something I always do for drawing poses. Despite having an animation background, line of action was just never something that was built into my thought process. But for this punch, you can really see that his back foot through his fist, there's a nice curved line, and then I also made the other parts of his body feel a little bit more like he's twisting through this punch. His other hand is back farther, and his other leg is up, so you can just really feel that whack. And then I made the hood on his hoodie swinging up a little bit more, and then I end up adding some more lines to sell the impact a bit. And I just had so much fun with this new version of the drawing. Like, I still like the old one, but this new one, I really feel how much I've improved over the years. And to sell this impact even more, I decided to have everything around them, the water and the sand, kind of just kicking up as if there was a shockwave sent from this punch, like it was just that impactful of a punch. And I think the shockwave works a little bit better with the sand than the water. The water looks a little bit awkward, but it's largely obscured by the shark's feet and Heath, so it doesn't really matter that much. Also, you can obviously tell I decided to do it as more of a fully rendered drawing with, you know, like a frame and everything, as opposed to just doing the platform. I don't really know why I decided to do that for this one and not the others, but I'm really glad I did that because there was an easy way to put a nice triangle into this composition with the sort of brownish color from the sand. Because the shark is gray, I can kind of push the gray into being a bit more of a brownish gray, so there's kind of a browny goldy kind of color making a triangle throughout the image, going from the sand up through the shark, and then the shark being a little bit brown makes him pop out from the blue of the water, and Heath's outfit being blue makes him pop out a little bit more from the brown sand, and the browny orange and the blue are complementary colors, so the whole thing was just clicking so well, and it felt so good doing this drawing. Near the end, as I was adding in some whoosh lines, I was a little bit worried that they were kind of messing things up a little bit, but by the time I finalize it, I was really happy with how it turned out, and I hope you like it too. Here's the final result. Okay, so now I've done one from each book, but I kind of want to draw one more thing, and I think I want to redraw a creature, because I'm just in a creature mode, and I remember liking a bunch of the creatures I designed for these books, but I think I want to do this sort of dragon hellhound kind of thing that I made for the first book, and that's this guy right here. And I think I actually redrew this guy last year as well, so I'm curious to see how my art style has changed both from this series to today and from a year ago to today. Let's see. Now this drawing took a comedically long time to figure out the pose I wanted, and I wasn't even changing it up that much, I was just kind of tweaking the same idea. I mean, you're seeing it sped up now, but I seriously spent like an hour or an hour and a half just messing around with slight variations on the pose, and I even eventually ended up starting into rendering it and then being like, I gotta tweak it a little bit more. But I ended up going with one that is kind of like the 2016 pose, but I wanted to think about what was happening in the story a little bit more. Basically, at this point, that creature has just evolved into what it looks like now. It's like a dragon thing, and it's holding the MacGuffin of the story, the thing that the main character is trying to get his hands on for the whole thing. And this is like the final boss battle. Sterling's got to go up by himself against this thing to get that item. So I was trying to think about the storytelling of it a little bit more, and how in the 2016 image, the object is kind of off to the side and not that important looking. when really it's the thing that we've spent the whole book with the main character trying to get his hands on. So as much as I want it to be a big, cool shot of the creature, we also got to keep in mind that that is the object we're going for. So I decided to use the wings of the creature to frame that object in the middle behind the guy, and the tail is doing a bit of an angular curve. I don't know why I wanted to do this image a little bit more angular style, but I just kind of did, so I went with it, and I'm glad I did. I think it looks kind of cool here. But yeah, so the wings are framing the object and the tail is framing it, and then we can look down at the creature's head, and I end up putting a bit of glow rim lighting coming off of the object because it's got some glow to it. And I was also kind of inspired to do that rim lighting by looking at the 2018 image that I'd drawn, because in that one, it's funny, looking at it, I can see that I was starting to experiment with lighting a lot more then. I was just starting to figure out rim lighting in 2018, and I was really overusing it and using it in places where it wouldn't necessarily be, which is something I still do selectively nowadays. I'll put rim lighting in spots where there wouldn't actually be rim lighting just to make something separate a little bit more. Usually it's a creative decision. Sometimes I do it by accident or because I'm not thinking about it. But because I was looking at that and how I was way overusing the rim lighting, I decided to have some rim lighting in this image that's actually inspired by something in the scene. So I just end up putting it on the creature's wings a bit and the top of its shoulders. And then to make sure we want to look at the creature's face a little bit too, I have a bit of a glow coming from its eye that casts a bit of rim lighting just around the area near the creature's eye. And then besides that, I kind of kept it stylistically similar to the 2016 version. Like, he's still got big blocky forearms and big paws. So the big main difference is really just the confidence in this one. I'm a lot more confident with my line work and my shadowing, where I want the shadows, where to use black in the image, and just the idea for what's happening in the story in terms of how everything's posed and framed. But yeah, this was seriously a blast to redraw. Let's take a look at how this final redraw turned out. Man, these books are weird. But going back is super nostalgic. There was actually supposed to be a fourth one that was gonna kind of wrap up the first arc. Maybe I should go back and write it now. Well, anyway. Alright everybody, this was seriously a blast, and I'd love to do a follow-up episode and do even more of these, so if people want that, let me know in the comments. And if you want to see a whole bunch of my other old artwork, I've got a 20-year sketchbook tour video where I go over 20 years of my sketchbooks going back to when I was like 5 years old, and people have been asking me to redraw some of that art, so I'm thinking I might do one of those as well. And of course, thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Remember to use that link to get your 2-month free trial. And besides that, that's all for this episode. Remember to leave a like if you enjoyed yourself, subscribe, ring the bell, share it with anyone you think might be interested. But I'm Christian Pearson, this has been PopCross Studios, home of the nerdiest art videos on YouTube, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye, everybody.